We're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 this morning. Is the original, what the Lord laid on my heart about 3 weeks ago, I guess. He began to give me this message. And since that time, there's been some other things come about. It didn't go away. A lot of times, things will start in your mind and then they'll kind of go away, but this didn't go away. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. That's the intent this morning. But first I want to say thank you. There's been several asked me this morning how I was feeling, where I'd been sick. I'm feeling as good as I ever did, and I thank you and appreciate you all praying. I thank you for those things. Sometimes I'm guilty, especially of not saying thank you when I should. I also want to say thank you for the prayers that you have lifted up for Kay. I appreciate those things. We don't really have any answers of what was going on. We have an answer that it's not her heart. That's what they keep saying. That's what they keep telling us. With the heart cath that they done, it was completely clear. She's everything's no blockage at all is what the doctor told me. The EKGs come back normal. All the different things, they come back normal, and they're still looking. The things that I saw happen several times was there again. And this started with her about 10 years ago. The first time we ended up in the emergency room was before Brad and Julie was married. We were at Hilton Head. And she ended up having this, and we ended up in the emergency room, and heart rate way up and all those different things, but they really couldn't find anything. When she come back, they couldn't find anything, and it's sort of been dropped, and since then it's happened a couple more times, as severe as it was that Thursday night. But she's dealt with it off and on for 10 years. Thursday night when she come in, she avoided me, so I knew right off something was going on. But she come in the kitchen door and she went the opposite way of where I'm normally at. And I asked her before she ever got to me what was wrong. And when she got to me, she was all humped over, grabbing her chest and crying, and had something that she could throw up in. Had pain all across her chest, down her arm, and the center of her back, and was nauseated. Every one of those are symptoms of a heart attack. So I finally convinced her that we need to go. We got in a vehicle and started in that direction. I just said a little prayer. Lord, I can't do anything about this. She's in your hands. That's all I could do. But I began to think about that again this week. The things that went through my mind as she come through the door and things of that nature, the anxiety that I felt as I saw her come through the door, and then as not being able to handle or not being able to do anything about it. I'm a guy that can fix things. I like to fix things, and there ain't a whole lot of things I can't fix, but that's one I couldn't fix. We face that sometimes. We face those anxieties in life a lot of times as we go through life. We've faced a lot of anxiety over the past year with the things going on in our country, with the COVID and different things, all the things that have come through, not being able to visit or see each other or visit our grandparents or things of that nature. Those are anxieties, and those bring on a lot of anxieties in our life. And then sometimes we bring on anxiety too in our own lives. With the things that we do or the directions that we go in our life, we bring on those anxieties. And I began to think about that, and what I had said that morning as we were on our way up there, the little prayer that I said to the Lord, I began to think about those anxieties and those things. And I began to think about the way people handle those anxieties in the world that we live now. Most of the time, when people are going through those anxieties, or a lot of the times, I shouldn't say most of the time, a lot of the times they turn to things in this world. They turn to things that this world says will take care of or hide or get rid of those anxieties. And I remember that in my life, and I remember a lot of times when I did that, when I had those anxieties before I came to know the Lord, I tried the things that the world said, and what I remember about those things is they left me with more or greater anxieties when things were over than I had before. And I began to think about, where do people turn and all those different things. And the thankfulness that I felt in my heart that I had somewhere to turn. Psalms 94:19 says, "In the multitude of my thoughts, within me thy comforts delight my soul." And what it's saying is, it says, in the multitude of my anxieties, God comforts me. When I was going through those things that Thursday morning, there were some anxieties there. And like I said, I couldn't change things, so they were there. But when I prayed to the Lord, those things went away. The anxieties went away. The aggravation of not knowing didn't go away, or the things that we endured as we watched the live version of the Untold Stories of the ER, those were there, but the anxieties about what was going on with her went away in my life. And I'm so thankful that I had some place to turn. And I hope you all have that same place to turn. That you're able to turn to Him during those anxieties and be able to turn to Him when things are not going the way that they're supposed to, or the way that we feel like they're supposed to in our lives. We have somewhere to run. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 and 7, it says, "Be careful for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ." Through Christ Jesus. I got ahead of myself. But if we just know Him and we're willing to give Him those things, it tells us that His peace that passes all understanding. I don't know how He does it. I don't know where this peace comes from. I don't know all the things that come about. But He does, and it says that He'll keep our hearts and minds when we turn those things over to Him. And I'm thankful today for that. I'm thankful today that I can say that I know a God that's capable of helping me in any situation that I'm in, any circumstance that I find myself in. I'm thankful that I know a God that I can turn to, that has me in the palm of His hand, no matter where or what is going on in my life. And I'm thankful for that today. And I'm hopeful that each and every one of you can say the same thing as you go through those different trials of life. When I spoke to Janet this morning, I asked her how she was doing. She said, "Thankful." Then they told us the situation. I didn't know Sam had an accident, but Greg mentioned that to us in a prayer request. Thankful for God's hand of protection. Someplace to go in that storm. Someplace to go when we're having those trials of life. Thankful for that. I hope each one of you all. Hope each one of you have that place to run, that cliff that you can get under, that howling winds can't reach you and the storms and rains can't touch you because you're in there with God. I hope you have those things. But if you don't have those things, I I know the God that can give them to you. I can introduce you. But I hope you already know. I hope you already have. I'm thankful for what he does for us. I'm going to give you opportunity. I feel like I need to give you opportunity if you have a testimony or something right now before I start on this other. Anybody got anything they want to say? Don't be shy.
Gary, can I say something?
Yes, sir.
What I'm gonna tell you means it's absolutely nothing as far as, nothing like what Cade went through or accident or anything like that. But this is a true story as best I can tell it. You just know I picked a manager. I've got a thumb pick right here in my pocket. There's a place in Knoxville makes these called blue chip pick guns. And they're very expensive, which that means nothing in the store either. Other than they gave me to them because they like me, I guess, or whatever. Anyway, they gave me to them several years ago. And it's a, it's a very good pick. And we were down at Pigeon Forge. We went down to stay 3 nights down there a few days ago. And there's, where we was at, there's a creek running down under the place. And I reached in my pocket to get a key out. And when I reached in there and got that key out, my thumb pick went. I thought, oh no. It went over the side, and there was still some snow down there. This was on Thursday night. And I went down looking for my pick in the snow, and I didn't see it. And I always do this, but I asked the Lord, I said, if you want me to find this thing, help me find it. I didn't find it. I said, well, Lord, evidently you didn't want me to find it or whatever. So I went in the house. It was dark. Friday, I was fiddling around. I said, Mom, something told me to go back down there and look for it. And I went back down in the snow and rocks and everything and looked around. Didn't find it Friday. Off and on 2 or 3 different times on Friday. And so Saturday come around, I got up Saturday morning. It's real chilly, and cold. I thought, well, I'm going to go out there and look at that old thumb pick one more time. And I went out and I looked and looked and I said, Lord, evidently you don't want me to find this. If you do, please show it to me. And I swear to God, I scooped down in the creek and come up with a bunch of gravel, and that pick was in the gravel. I mean, it's just an old thumb pick. But he let me hunt it for 3 days. But I guess what I'm getting at, he thinks as much of the little bitty things as he does the big thing.
Amen. He does.
I'll show you.
That's good.
That's
good.
true as far, right down the line.
What's important to us is important to him.
But when I come up with them gravels, it's real fine chat. You couldn't see in the water, it's wrinkly. The water's real wrinkly.
Yeah.
And I looked all in the water and I couldn't see it. And it had laid there for 3 days. And that water, and I came up, that scoop of gravel, and there it was in the palm of my hand. And there was chills running all over me.
Sometimes he just wants to see how faithful or how far we will go for him to answer too. That's good. Anybody else? I just felt like I needed to give opportunity.
All we got to do is ask.
All we got to do is ask.
Well, it says we have, if we have not, we ask not.
He's faithful, isn't he?
He is faithful.
Anyone else? Nobody else?
It's amazing how you know, as I was talking to you a little while ago, talking about all the technology we have, and God has made so much detail, so complicated to us, that we have no idea on a lot of things. You know, he's just way awesome. No other way to describe it. You know, I think of all the things that he knows, I have no clue. So many things.
When we sit down and look at ourselves and put it into perspective, you know, we're just a speck in a great big universe. Many light years to get across the universe that they know, and we're just a speck in that. And yet God is mindful of us. He's mindful of us.
Each one of us.
Each one of us. That's what I was going to say.
At the same time.
We had a prayer, and we're asking one thing. Jerry had a prayer and was asking something different, and he was mindful of both of us. While all those things were going on, I'm thankful for that. And sure, nobody else. Don't let the devil cheat you now if you got something on your heart. All right. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And we'll begin reading in verse 10. Paul here says, according to the grace of God, which is given unto me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereupon. For other foundation can no man lay that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if any man build upon this foundation, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. And if any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss. But he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. As we begin to think about this, begin to look at this today, give me just a second and I'll get with you. This came about, you know, as I've been studying of a morning, I've been going through Kings and Chronicles and Ezra. I've been studying right through those areas there and reading those things. And what got me thinking is the way things are laid out about the kings as you go through there. Every king of Israel was listed. Every king of Israel had some things wrote about him as you go through those chapters there. And I began to wonder, why does it matter? What's God trying to tell me here? Because he puts every king, or gives me a description of every king, or tells me about the life of every king. What's he trying to tell me here? Why did God want those descriptions of their life included? Why are those things going on? Why does something that happened over 2,000 years ago matter? Or how does it affect us? Is what my thinking was behind that, behind this message. That's the way God got me thinking about it. And I began to think, well, when we look into the past, we see the things that have happened there. And I've always heard that those that pay no attention to the past are doomed to repeat it, right? So we see that a lot of times with those kings. We'll see a king that was a good king and he did the things that God wanted him to do, and maybe the next couple of generations were that way, but not quite as good as the first one. And then the generation after that, they reverted back to the evil that was going on, and then things got really bad, and then they have 2 or 3 good kings. You know, we see that kind of as a cycle. So they were living through that very thing. Those that didn't remember or didn't think about history were bound to repeat it. And then sometimes they was just evil kings. You know, they'd come onto the scene. They might have had a great example in their father, the one that sat on the throne before them, and then when they get there, they may have just been evil. And they done the things that were against God. But I've always heard that those that pay no attention are bound to repeat that. And I began to think about those things and begin to think about our nation. You know, compare our nation to the things going on in our nation now. Compare it to the Roman Empire. You know, if we think about the Roman Empire, a lot of the same things that were goes in the Roman Empire, a lot of the same things that were considered good and okay and things of that nature are the things that are going on in our nation right now. You think about this nation, and a lot of the things that were bad they called good. And a lot of the things that they was good they called bad. Now look at our nation today. You know, the things that are good, the things of God, the direction of God, church, things of that nature, they're bad. We got to shut them down. They're the ones spreading all the disease and all those different things. We got to shut the church down. But yet, a lot of the things that are going on in our world are brought out in God's Word as something that is definitely evil. And we call those good. The world does. We don't. I hope we don't. I don't call those good. But the world does. Those are good. So I began to think about what God's trying to tell us here. And I believe He's trying to give us a warning. You look at those kings' lives, and you see the things that they've done, and you even go to a point as you read through them, how maybe they were buried, or where they were buried. You know, kings that done the things that were supposed to have been done, they were buried with their fathers, is what they say. You know, there was a special place that they had for the kings, and some of the ones that didn't, they were buried out back somewhere, or the people rebelled against them and killed them, or things of this nature. There's a lot of different things happen. And I began to think about those warnings. Have you ever said, or have you ever had said to you, if you act like that, I will, and you can fill in the blank. If you ever act like that, I will. I remember saying that. We were in the store one day, and they were waiting in line to go out, you know, and they got all them trinkets there right as the checkout goes. And Brad was in the buggy, and there's a couple of kids in front of us, and oh man, they were pitching a fit. They wanted something off those trinket racks there. And I seen a twinkle in his eye. It was, you know, because Mom and Dad were giving in up there. They was trying to keep them quiet. You know, they, okay, you know, we'll hand them over here. And I saw that twinkle in his eye. He saw an opportunity, and I said, if you ever act like that, I'll take you out of here and wear you out. That twinkle went away. And I've said it. I kind of wondered if God was putting those things in there for us as kind of a warning. You know, if you ever act like that, then I'm going to fill in the blank. And I got to thinking about that, what God has intended or what God's got for us. You know, these kings, as you look at them, they had their deeds, whether it was good or evil. They had their deeds, their attitudes, their beliefs, their relationships, their sins, their shortcomings, their failures. God placed every bit of this in full view for each and every one of us to see. He placed it in full view for all of us to see. I began to think about that on a personal level. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 10, it says that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. 2 Corinthians 5:10 it says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that every one may receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. You know, the verses that I read to you there in Corinthians, as we read through those, Paul here is telling us, he says, I know the foundation, and the foundation is Jesus Christ, and I'm building on that foundation. But one of these days, those things that I build on this foundation are going to be tested. They're going to be took through the fire, and they're going to see if I've put gold or silver or precious stones on that foundation. Or if what I've placed on that foundation is wood or hay or stubble. You know, those things are going to be tested. Each and every one of us are going to stand before Christ at some moment in time in our life. There's two times that are given to us for people to stand before Christ in judgment. One of them is when the Christians will stand before God. And that's what Paul's talking about here, when a Christian's standing before God and God's looking at their works, and He's going to say, well, you've placed gold or silver or precious stones on the foundation that was laid, or you put wood or stubble or hay or whatever it is on those foundations, and we're going to be judged on those things. He goes on there and tells us that if our work abides, we'll receive a reward. But if not, we shall suffer loss. That doesn't mean that we're going to be cast in the lake of fire. It just means that the rewards that God's going to hand out, we won't get. And I really think the rewards that He hands out are going to be cast right back at His feet when we get there. Now, I'm not saying just put wood and stubble on there. That's not what I'm saying. You know, we need to work for those, to build that foundation of God in a manner that it should be. But I'm just saying that we'll still be saved. We might say in our lives, well, I got nothing to hide. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 20, it says, for there is not a just man upon the earth. Think about that. There is not a just man upon the earth that doeth good and sinneth not. Well, that lumps us all in the same category, doesn't it? Just like Romans does, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That tells us that we all are in that same place. We're all in that same boat. The only difference is, if we stand in this judgment, we give our hearts and lives to God. We are a child of His if we stand in that judgment. Now, all those things are going to be revealed about our lives. And I got to thinking about that. And I keep thinking about that movie of my life being unfolded. And I got to thinking about my mama watching that movie. And that brings tears to my eyes. That my mama's going to see my life. I don't know that she will. I can't say that will happen. You know, everybody in there is probably going to be head down and worried about their own self and probably never notice as each one of us goes through. But what if Mama is watching my movie? That brings hurt to my heart, because that movie's not too good. Not good at all until the blood of Christ went across it. And then it changed. But we'll stand in judgment. It says every knee, doesn't say part of us, every knee will bow and every tongue confess. So what do we need to do? You know, what do we need to get out of this? Well, in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, Solomon was a wise man, and he told us here in chapter 12, verse 13 and 14, he says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So he tells us what we need to do, what our futures need to look like. We need to please God. We need to live for God. We need to uplift God. We need to follow God. We need to do everything that God desires of us. And he goes on here and he tells us why. Verse 14. And he says, for God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing. You know, all those things that I think about whenever I'm thinking about my mom watching that movie, those are secret things. Those are things that I don't want anybody to know about. Yet God already knows about those things. My whole duty is to serve God. Because He's going to bring every work into judgment, every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. You know, my mind automatically runs to the evil. But there's going to be things in our life that we've done that are good that nobody knows about too. God already knows those things. So we need to be sure that we're not fooled into believing that we can just be good and everything will be okay. The other judgment that I spoke of is the great white throne judgment, is what it's called. In Revelation chapter 20, verse 11, it says, "And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away. And there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of these things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." As I look at this and think about this, we know that this is the second judgment. Second death is coming about for those that are evil. And it says that the books were opened. In those books are the deeds of their lives. And I got to thinking about that. The deeds of their lives. And how many people would be standing in that judgment that felt like they didn't deserve to be there? In Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, it says, "Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works?" And then he will profess unto them, "I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity." I got to thinking about all those that are going to stand in that line and say, "Lord, didn't we? Don't we? Shouldn't we be allowed in? Don't we deserve to be allowed in?" And that's the verses that came to my mind. Many will say those things, and yet he'll say, "Depart from me, you workers of iniquity." And as you read that great white throne judgment, it says, "And the books were opened, and they were judged from those books." Those are the deeds of life. And then it says, "And another book was opened, which is the book of life." Now I got to thinking, why did he have to open this book? If their deeds were evil, why did he have to open this book? And I thought about Matthew chapter 7 there. And then he's going to say, "Hey, don't I deserve to be in?" And he's going to open this book up and flip to the page that should have their name on it. It's going to be blank. Name's not going to be there. The very last part of that says, "Whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." Hear the book closing. You know, the truth is, I believe he gives us these warnings so we'll get ready. In Ezra chapter 7, verse 10, it says, "For Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord, and to do it, and to teach in Israel statutes and judgments." For Ezra here, it says that he had prepared his heart. He got ready. He got ready to do the things that he should do. He got ready to do the things that God desired of him. He got ready to do whatever it was or whatever direction God wanted him to go. He was ready. He was ready. He had already done that evaluation process. He had already done the things necessary to prepare his life to go in that direction. We need to do that evaluation process, as I read in Matthew chapter 7. Sometimes we think we're a little better off than we are. You know, I would have failed in that category if I had died before the fall of 1995. I went to church. My parents took me to church. I knew the things of God. I knew who God was. I knew all the things that the Bible had taught. I'd sat in those Sunday school classes. I'd been through tic-tac-toe and Bible bowl and all those different things. I knew those things. But yet I was as far away from God as somebody sitting on death row. I found myself, as Ecclesiastes chapter 7 says, I realized that I was not a just man, and that I didn't do good, and that I had sinned in my life in 1995. But up until that point, I would have been one of those arguing in Matthew chapter 7. Don't I deserve? I went to church. I participated in the youth activities. I did the extracurriculars. I knew what to say. I knew how to act. I knew all the different little things that went on in the church. I knew those. Do I not deserve? That would have been me. And I would have heard those words, "Depart from me, you worker of iniquity, for I never knew you." That's what I would have heard. We've got to evaluate our lives, and we've got to be honest about that evaluation. In Ezra chapter 9, it says, "Now when these things were done, the princes came to me, saying, The Lord of Israel, or the people of Israel, and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands, doing according to the abominations, even of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, the Amorites, for they have taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons, so the holy seed have mingled themselves with the people of these lands. Yea, the hand of the princes and rulers hath been chief in this trespass. And when I heard this thing," this is Ezra speaking here, he says, "When I heard this thing, I rent my garment and my mantle, and plucked off the hair of my head and of my beard, and sat down astonished." Ezra here, what did he say? What did I tell you he done in chapter 7, verse 10? It said, Ezra prepared his heart to follow God. And now they've came to him and they've said, well, you know, a bunch of them folks over there, a bunch of them Israelites over there are doing exactly what God told them not to do. And it says here that he ripped his mantle and his cloak, and he pulled his hair out, and he plucked his beard, and he sat down astonished that they wouldn't listen to God. In verse 4 it says, then were assembled unto me every one that trembled at the words of the God of Israel, because of the transgression of those that had been carried away. And I sat astonished until the evening sacrifice. And at the evening sacrifice I rose up from my heaviness, and having rent my garment and my mantle, I fell upon my knees and spread out my hands unto the Lord my God, and said, O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift up my face to thee. My God, for our iniquities are increased over our head, and our trespass is grown up into the heavens. Now, he had already done the things that he needed to do, but yet he was totally ashamed at how the people around him had been acting before God. You see, he wanted them to do the things of God too. He wanted them to live for God. He wanted them to grow in God. He wanted them to go to meet God. That was his desire. That ought to be our desire as Christians. We ought to have a desire in our lives that others go with us. Not just get ourselves ready and be all right. Preacher T.F. Lewis, the one that founded Limestone where we used to go, he'd say, "Us four and no more." He said that's kind of our mindset. We get our families ready. Us four, doesn't matter about anybody else, no more. But we ought to want all to go with us. We ought to want our neighbors to go, our co-workers, or people we go to school with, whatever it may be. We ought to want them all to go where we're going. It's important. And as Ezra's dealing with all these things here, we move on down to verse 13 in that chapter 9. He had talked about how God had took them into captivity and things of this nature. And he says, "And after all that has come upon us for our evil deeds and for our great trespass, seeing that thou art our God hast punished us less than our iniquities deserve, and has given us such deliverance as this." When I sit down and I think about my life, that movie that'll be played one of these days, I think about the shortcomings and the failures and the sins and the downright nastiness that's in my life, and that God punished me less than my iniquities deserved, and has given me such great deliverance. I'm overwhelmed at just how merciful God is. I'm overwhelmed. You know, as I started today, I talked about that merciful God and how He deals with us in our crisis. And yet He deals with us even though we deserve to be punished. I'm so thankful for that God. And if you don't know that God this morning, I want you to know Him. You see, I told you I knew all about Him. I went to church. I knew the things. I knew about that God, but I didn't know Him. I just knew about Him. One day, I met Him. And I met Him, and when I knelt down by my bed and I asked Him to come live in my heart, I met that God. And since that time, He has been so wonderful in my life. Have I been what I need to be? No. Am I where I need to be? No. But God is so wonderful. He has punished me less than I deserve, and given me such great deliverance as this. Have you experienced that in your life? Have you experienced this great God in your life? If not, then He wants to meet you. He wants to come to know you. He wants to meet you this very day. You want to meet Him? We can introduce you. You will stand.
Page 596.